Hey guys, Bobby here to talk all things hyperlapses today. You've seen them in YouTube videos, you might have a custom setting on your camera or your drone, you may have even tried your hand at one, but if you're looking to learn how to do a hyperlapse both the traditional way and the easy way, then this video is for you. So what is a hyperlapse? The easiest way to describe it is a time lapse with motion. But we aren't talking just panning across the frame or something like that. A hyperlapse can introduce actual movement from the camera over really long distances. Hyperlapses have exploded in popularity recently, in large part due to the emergence of gimbals and drones and things with built-in systems to do them. But in order to do them properly, I think it's important to know how they work without these tools. So let's first talk briefly about the hard way to accomplish a hyperlapse before getting into the easier way. So this first way is definitely tedious and time consuming, but it does give you a little bit more control, and it can be done with just a camera, a tripod, and ideally a remote trigger, though that isn't completely necessary. You'll want to first determine your path. In this hyperlapse, I wanted to move straight back from this museum in Cuba down a long, wide sidewalk. You'll also need to figure out how far you want to move for each movement. It's helpful if there's some kind of consistent marker on the ground. In this setting, the sidewalk was made of large squares, so I moved a half square for each exposure. Second, you'll want to figure out your settings. I'm not going to get into this here, but the exposure time or shutter speed is the important thing, and it's based on what type of movement will be in the frame. If you want a specific length of hyperlapse, then you need to figure out how many photos you need to take to hit that. We often edit in 24 frames per second, so if I wanted a 5-second clip, that would be 5 times 24, or 120 photos. Lastly, before you start, you'll want to find an anchor point. Now I picked the center of the flag to be at the center of my screen. You'll be moving, so make sure to pick something that you can easily line up. And now it's time to start. When all your settings are good to go, you'll take a picture, you'll pick up your tripod, you'll move in the direction of your path, set it back down, realign your anchor point in the same exact spot on your screen, take a photo, rinse and repeat. You'll be left with a number of photos that you can then compile into a short video clip in your editor of choice. And I've got a couple quick hitter tips for you here. Number one, use a remote trigger. I mentioned this earlier, if you can. This is going to stop you from moving the camera ever so slightly when you press the shutter button if you're doing it on the camera. Second, you don't need your anchor point to be right in the center. You can change your focal point on the screen wherever you want it, but make sure to leave it up on the screen so that you can keep setting your anchor point in that same little square. Now that you know the background of how a hyperlapse works in the traditional sense, let's look at a much easier way to accomplish a very similar outcome. For this, you'll need a camera on a gimbal, and this can be everything from a smartphone to a DSLR to a drone camera, as long as you can keep it pretty steady while moving with it. So this is a clip of me walking through the streets of Havana, and I only had my GoPro stabilizer with me, so please go easy on the quality here. So much like the traditional way, I have a path that I'm walking, and I'm trying to keep as much of an anchor point as possible. However, I'm recording video here instead of photos. Now I'll want to record a decently long clip. The longer the clip, the more movement in the frame usually. But as you can see, this clip isn't terribly long, a handful of minutes, whereas the first example took me multiple hours to capture. Once we have our shot, we're going to take it into our editor, and then it's just a few easy steps to get this looking right. First, you're going to speed up your footage. I want it to be around 5 seconds or so again, so I'll do that. Then we can play through this, and it looks decent, but I wasn't walking perfectly, so let's try to smooth this out a bit. Now it's looking smoother, but one of the things you can accomplish when doing this by photos is dragging your shutter, and that will create some motion blur that we like, and we don't really have it here with the video. But we can accomplish that with an effect in our editor. Now I'm using the motion blur templates from Ryan Mangle. I highly recommend checking out his channel. These are great to work with. I'm going to throw this on top here, and now you can see it's much smoother. Of course, I would do more of a color grade and maybe add some other things in there, but as far as the actual technique goes, that is pretty much it, guys. You now know the basics behind a hyperlapse, how to do one the hard way with a bit more control and a lot more time, as well as the new way to still get some killer clips with a lot less effort. I hope you guys learned something, and I'll see you in the next video.